this imposing is a positive imposition because it was to positively engage with your aql, in Arabic, with your intellect, and with your nafsiyah, with your internal disposition, your psychology. And how does the Quran do this? Well, it asks profound questions. أَوَلَمْ يَتَفَكَّرُوا فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ? Do they not reflect within themselves? أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ? Do you not use your mind? So the Quran really brings these questions about so we could think and reflect. This is why it uses the word يَتَفَكَّرُونَ for those who reflect. That comes from the Arabic root فَكَرَى, which is used 18 times in the Quran. And its implications are quite profound. It doesn't mean just reflect like any old reflecting. It actually means the thing that you're reflecting upon, you must inquire about the implications of the object of reflection. So what does it mean to be a human being? Now the Quran goes even further than this, brothers and sisters and friends, because the Quran is a very existential book. Always refers to the self many times. Makes it real. It's not an abstract book. It doesn't deal with abstract theology. It's very profound. This one, the Quran questions, who are you? Are you just a product of society? Are you a product of social pressure? Are you a product of political circumstance? And the Quran summarizes this concept by saying, are you going to follow your forefathers? Even if they were wrong? And from this we get the point that the Quran is making us question, who are you? Aristotle, the famous Greek philosopher, he would say, self-knowledge is foundational. It's the most important type of knowledge. Because if you don't know who you are, you don't know who you belong to, you don't know your position in life, you don't know how to connect with other human beings. If you don't know yourself, how can you know others? If you don't know yourself, how can you even know God? So this is why the Quran brings this home and says, who are you? Are you just a product of your forefathers? A product of your society? Then surely you're no different from a robot. Just put in the code and then live your life. But human beings are far more dynamic than this. So this is why the Quran is also a very kind of dynamic, spiritual type of book. And the verse I mentioned before, أَوَلَمْ يَتَفَكَّرُوا فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ? Do they not reflect within themselves? A famous 11th century theologian and philosopher actually commented on this in his book, The Alchemy of Happiness. And this scholar was called Al-Ghazali. And he said the following thing. He said, there is nothing closer to yourself than yourself. If you don't know yourself, how will you know others? You might say, I know myself, but you're mistaken. The one thing you know about yourself is your physical appearance. The only thing you know about your inside is that when you are hungry, you eat. When you are angry, you fight. And when you are consumed by passion, you make love. In this regard, you are equal to any animal. You have to seek the reality with yourself. What are you? Where have you come from? And where are you going? What is your role in this world? And why have you been created? Where does your happiness lie? If you would like to know yourself, the reality of your existence is in your inwardness. Everything is the servant of your inward heart. This is the reality of the Quranic discourse. But the Quran not only makes one ponder, brothers and sisters, the Quran does something very profound. It actually breaks arrogance. It changes human beings. If we really reflect upon this book, it will create a paradigm shift in the internal psychology of any human being. And it goes straight to the biggest disease, the heart disease. And I'm not talking about the requirement for a triple bypass. I'm talking about the real heart disease, the spiritual state of arrogance. Because arrogance is the thing that makes us skew reality and not understand reality for what it is. It makes us inclined towards falsehood and things that are not in line with divine knowledge. This is the reality of arrogance. And I'll give you an example. The Big Bang Theory. Let's just take that as a crude example. You could have two conclusions from the Big Bang Theory. That something came from nothing, or something came from something. And therefore it must have been divine, or all-powerful. They're both sound conclusions, for argument's sake. They're both logical conclusions. Why would people take the conclusion came from nothing. Why would they do that? And don't say it's reason or intellectual thought. It's not. Because we've already done that process. We've already gone through that process. Because they're both almost equal in intellectual weight. Something comes from nothing or something came from something. Based upon the reality of the Big Bang. Why does one make the conclusion that something could come from nothing? Why? It's because his heart was in a certain state. Trust me, many of the conclusions we make are always, many times, like intellectual self-fulfilling prophecies. We've already made the conclusion. We were just looking for a justification. Many of the times we do this. It's a state of being. This is why Ibrahim alayhi salam in the Quran, what does he ask for? He asks for purification first, then knowledge. This is the reality of the human being. Because if you have knowledge and it's resonating within a very dark heart, with arrogance, the conclusions will be false. This is why many scientists even today support the idea of eugenics. That we could differentiate people's intellectual ability and capacity based on genetics. There was a paper the other day in the scientific journal saying a certain sect of Jews are the most intelligent in the world because that's how they've been developed genetically. Why does someone come to that conclusion? Because you could infer or deduce many things from the facts. But why do you go down that route? There must be something wrong here in the heart itself. And the Quran is very profound and deals with arrogance in two ways. In many ways, but two main ways. First and foremost, it says, remember your origins. I have a picture of a baby, 2 months. You couldn't even lift your own head up. And now you think you're the guy that could take over the world. You couldn't wipe your own backside. You couldn't feed yourself. You were dependent on others. And you think you're someone special now? Really breaking the arrogance of life, really reflect on our origins. Let's go a bit further back. You were a despised fluid. That's the reality of the human being. We're a despised fluid. And another form where the Quran deals with arrogance is by saying, where are you going to end? We're all going to die. Kullu nafsin dha'iqatul maut. Every soul is going to taste death. We're going to become worm buffet. The worms are going to have a buffet in our bodies, right? That's the reality. That's where we're going to end up, people. So that also breaks the arrogance here. So the Quran has an amazing way of dealing with this. So far in my presentation, I've discussed the message of the Quran, the way it wants to make people ponder and reflect on reality, how it deals with commanding people to do things, it couches things in the human language to really move people to action, give them the driving force. And also, we talked about how the Quran is a spiritual text that is very existential in a way, that deals with the self and the reality in society. And also, we talked about how the Quran deals with arrogance. But this doesn't mean the Quran is divine. It could just mean it's a special book, right? It could just mean it's a special book. It doesn't mean it's a divine message. It has a message. It sounds nice. Well, what you're hearing so far, but how does that make it divine? Well, I would humbly argue that the Quran is a miraculous text. It's a miracle. And before I discuss certain features that render it a miracle, we need to discuss, do miracles make sense in the first place? Now the old ironclad traditional view, the David Hume view of what a miracle was, is things that break natural law. Violations of natural law. But let's think about this and really reflect. What are natural laws? Aren't they just generalizations, inductive generalizations of patterns we perceive in the universe? If that's the case, if something breaks the pattern, does it mean it's a miracle? No, it doesn't. It's very incoherent. Because maybe we haven't been looking hard enough, or we missed out some parts of the pattern, or we haven't been around long enough. It's not a very coherent way of looking at a miracle. So I think the correct definition is the Islamic theological definition, which is an act of impossibility. An act of impossibility. Let's expand upon this. Essentially what it means is this, is that a miracle is an event that lies outside the productive capacity of nature. Think about this. It's not saying it's a violation of natural law. It's saying it's an event that lies outside the productive capacity of nature. Let me give you an example. What do we have here? A bottle of water. Now if in this bottle of water, I open the lid, I closed it, I gave it a good shake, and I produced my son. Yeah? This is made of plastic, water, and paper. This is the nature of the event. We go to the event, we go to the nature, we obviously see that no matter what we do with this, we exhaust all natural explanations. Put the bottle over here, shake it once, nothing's happening. Put it over there, shake it twice, nothing's happening. Open it again, put some oxygen in it, whatever the case may be, shake it again, nothing's happening. We exhaust every single possibility within the naturalistic explanation, all the naturalistic combinations to try and produce something like a human being. But we can't. But yet, the event here, which is another human being, came from the nature of the event, which is the bottle. But we know that no matter how many combinations we exhaust in the natural state of this thing, we will never create a human being. So we know this is a miracle now, if I were to do this. Because therefore my son would be an event that lies outside the productive capacity of the nature of where the event came from in the first place, which is bottle and water. But we know we can't create a human being just from bottle and water. So this is what it means by an act of impossibility. So when we go to the nature of the event, we can't find an explanation for the event itself. So again, it's a signpost to the transcendent. It's a signpost to the divine. Because we go into the nature, we exhaust all possibilities, but we can't find an explanation for the event. This is a more coherent view of what a miracle is. Now let me give you some reasons for the Quranic miracle. And there's 3 reasons here. 1, linguistic. 2, scientific. And 3, historical. So I repeat, scientific, linguistic, and historical. Now, the Quran has been described as an inimitable text with regards to the literary and linguistic features of the Quran. The linguistic and literary nature of the Quran. And its basis is in the Quran itself. You may have been shocked that the Quran makes one think and ponder, but the Quran goes even further than this and makes people become challenged with regards to its reality. As the Quran says in the 2nd chapter, the 23rd verse, وَإِن كُنْتُمْ فِي رَيْبٍ مِّمَّا نَزَّلْنَا عَلَىٰ عَبْدِنَا فَأْتُوا بِسُورَةٍ مِّن مِّثْلِهِ وَادْعُوا شُهَدَاءَكُم مِّن دُونِ اللَّهِ إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. If you're in doubt, the Quran is saying, talking to the philosophers, the scholars, the atheists, the scientists, the humanists, the agnostics, those sitting on the fence, those in the fence, everybody. If you're in doubt about this book, which we have sent down to our servant, the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him, then bring one chapter like it, one single chapter, only 3 lines long, and call on your witnesses and supporters and helpers and anyone else besides God if you are truthful in this claim. And when we scratch the surface of the Quran with regards to its linguistic and literary nature, we know it's unique. And its uniqueness is inimitable. No one has been able to match the uniqueness of the Quran. This is why the famous Arabist Arthur J. Arbery, who translated the Quran, he said, for the Quran is neither prose nor poetry, but a unique fusion of both. And we have many reasons that render the Quran inimitable. 1, it's a unique literary form. Now, what we mean by literary form is not the way it sounds and I enjoy it. It's not like listening to Shakespeare, oh Romeo, wherefore art thou